G'day folks, and welcome to Robbie's River Roundup for the end of September 2015. After this river roundup, I'm just going to talk a little bit about soft plastics. I know I've made a couple of YouTube videos, just recently about soft plastics, how to rig them, how to work them and stuff like that, how to cast them underarm. But I still continue to get a lot of questions about soft plastics, particularly people asking what's the best size soft plastic to use. Well, the best size jig head, to use. There are so many variables to that question. The wind speed, the water current, water depth, how far you need to cast, the species that you're targeting. There are so many different things you need to take into account when you're choosing your jig head or your soft plastic. So stay tuned, and after my river report, I'll just talk and say a few things about soft plastics. How are the rivers looking? Well, they're looking great. This is the Ovens River. This is the just on cue, a big carp's just jumped out there. I'm actually got my bait rods in the car. I'm going to go and try and catch a carp after I finish filming. That's looking fantastic. The problem is, it's the 28th of September. That water should be right up here where I'm standing now. That's too low. This time of year, the river should be just coming off a flood, or even still flooded. The rivers, the creeks, the streams, they're all looking really good, but they're too low. So what we've had for September is we've had some fantastic trout fishing right across the region because the rivers and creeks have been great. Everybody's caught trout and everyone's had fun, and it's good for now, but get in while it lasts, because if we don't get any rain, in the next couple of months those creeks and rivers could be in a lot of trouble. These bigger rivers will be okay, they'll just stay low all summer, but we really need rain. Noisy bastards. Anyway, if you look at my YouTube, my river roundup, from this time last year, you will see that I was talking about rain last year and the rivers being low, and they were. But last year, it wasn't quite as dry as what it has been this year, and we were saved by some good rainfall in October and November. I'm hoping like hell that we get that again this year, because if we don't get some late spring rain, we're going to be in a bit of trouble coming into summer. To put it into perspective, Wangaratta, where I live, receives around about 53 to 54 millimetres of rain each September. That's our September average. This September we've only had 12 mils or 13 mils or something like that. We've had around about 20% or 1/5 of our September rainfall. That ain't cool, folks. That ain't cool at all. Hopefully we can get some more rain later in spring, otherwise these creeks and rivers are going to be low. But for now, they're all in great condition. The Murray cod are off limits because the season's closed. That's why this afternoon I'm just going to bait fish with a bunch of worms. I'll probably sit in one spot and that's all I'll do. If I do happen to catch a cod, chances are it will be undersized. If it is a big one, well, I'll put it back unharmed. It'll be a genuine bycatch, and it'll only be one because I'm not working the whole river. I'm just working one spot with my bait, if that makes sense. I do the best I can to leave the cod to spawn. However, I still like to get out and go fishing in the spring months. It's a great time of the year. So for now, the rivers are looking great, the streams are looking great, everything's looking just as good as it's going to be at the moment. Hopefully we get some rain. If we don't get much rain, then make the most of these great conditions, because by November some of the smaller waterways are going to be really struggling. Now, as I said, I'm going to talk about some soft plastics. Probably the most commonly asked question that I get from people is, what's the best size jig head to use? Let's see if I can just explain a few things. Here, I'll put them in that hand. Here I have a little striped tiger nymph. It's rigged up. The whole soft plastic is 1 inch long. So I've got a hook that comes out about 2/3 of the way down the lure like that. That's a good size hook. That jig head I think is 1/16 of an ounce. With something like this, if I'm fishing in a small waterway, there's not a lot of flow and a lot of current, I'll use the smallest jig head that I can get away with, because the slower that moves through the water as it wobbles and comes through, the slower it moves, the more likelihood there is of the fish engulfing it. What they do, they open their mouth and they go, they inhale all the water in, not just the thing they're eating, which is the soft plastic. They don't just inhale that, they inhale all the water, and the water gets passed out through their gills, and that ensures a good hookup. The slower you can retrieve your soft plastic, the more chance you've got of a good hookup. So try and retrieve it as slow as you can. But the thing is, to have a slow retrieve you need a light jig head. If there's too much current, there's no good, because it won't even sink. The current will just wash the light jig head up against the bank. So you need something with a little bit of weight that can contend against the current. If you're in an area with deep water and you need the soft plastic to sink, you need to up your jig head size again. If you're in a lake and you want to be able to cast out further, then you need a bit more weight. So you're sacrificing the slower retrieve to gain in the casting distance, or you're sacrificing the slower retrieve to allow the plastic to sink. Does that make sense? So in a nutshell, you need to use the lightest soft plastic that you can get away with for the conditions that you are fishing. Now, here is a great big one. This is a Z-Man 5-inch paddle tail grub. It's quite a big lure. I wouldn't use that weeny little jig head on there. I'll put that down here for a second. I wouldn't use this little jig head on there. This is a 5 grammer, I think, or 4 grammer or something. I wouldn't use that because some of these plastics, particularly the Z-Man, they're quite a buoyant plastic. They float quite well. But most plastics do have a tendency to either sink really slow or float. Most of them sink really slow. That would put the hook, if this particular jig head was on there, that would put the hook 1/2 inch from the head. As I stated earlier, if you've got a nice slow retrieve, even with a Murray cod, the fish will inhale a whole lot and it might get hooked. But I think that hook is too small. I personally don't like to use a small hook on a small soft plastic. So I'll get rid of that one. This is a better size. This is only 1/4 of an ounce. That is way too big for the nymph. You wouldn't put that, you wouldn't put that great big hook on that tiny little soft plastic, would you? Because it'd sit like that. The hook would be hanging out, it's twice the size of the bloody plastic. So that'd be stupidity. So you want a bigger jig head with a bigger hook for the bigger plastic. If I rig that up like that, that hook is going to come out not quite halfway down the length of the soft plastic. In my eyes, and everyone's different, me personally, I'd be targeting Murray cod with a lure that long. I would like the lure to be further back. The Murray cod will, if it's going nice and slow, which it would with this 1/4 ounce jig head, the Murray cod will still engulf it and it will still get hooked. But I would prefer the hook to be further back. So I would like a longer shanked hook. So, point being, that's the best of the ones that I've got, and that will work a treat. That's a TT jig head, 1/4 ounce, but it's a little bit on the small side. So you could get something longer. What I would probably do with this, I would get my knife and cut probably 1 inch off the end of it and make it a 4-inch paddle tail grub. Put that hook in there, and that would have the hook only about 1 inch up from the tail, and that would make a dynamite little yellow belly soft plastic rig like that. For Murray cod, I'd probably get a bigger jig head. 1/4 of an ounce with something that size would probably work. It would cast. It would be quite slow at sinking. A lot of Murray cod like to live down deep under the logs, remember, and when there's a bit of current coming through and stuff like that, it's going to be very hard to sink the soft plastic to where you want it. I'd probably go for at least a 1/2 ounce jig head, I think, or a 5/8 or something like that. That's really gonna cast down and cast further and sink quicker. So yeah, just try and find something that's gonna suit. It's just, you've got to use your noggin a little bit sometimes. There's no set way. I can't say, yeah mate, grab a 1/2 ounce with a 1/0 hook and blah blah blah. It doesn't work. Go into the tackle shop, say, oh, there's the soft plastic. Which jig head does it fit? That one there looks good, but the hook's only gonna come halfway down. Yeah, that's got a nice lot of length about it, but the jig head looks too light. Yeah, that one's going to have a nice heavy head. The hook's going to come out about 2/3 of the way down the plastic, meaning the hook's closer to the tail and more likely to get a hook up. That one will do. And that goes with all soft plastics. You get your soft plastic, you try and choose a hook or a jig head that's going to have a hook coming out about halfway along its back or a little bit closer to the tail, and the casting weight that you think you're going to need for the occasion. Getting back to the nymph, this tiny weeny little one, this is rigged, I think, with a 1/16 jig head. Believe it or not, that's the heavier one that I use for the nymph. I've got one half the size of it, which is 1/32 of an ounce, 1/32th, 1/32nd. I don't know how you say that. That's not real good English, is it? 1/32th of an ounce. Certainly not that one. 1/32 of an ounce. Anyway, it's half the size of this 1/16. It's very, very light. Now in grams, I think that's only like a gram or something like that. It's very light. It's ideal in the small streams. It doesn't cast very far. You're 4 or 5 metres out of it, it's like casting a grasshopper without a sinker of any kind, or a bunch of worms without a split shot. This one here with the 1/16, that allows me to cast it further, and I can cast it with a bit more accuracy because they cast better when they're a little bit heavier, but I can't work it as slow. So in a nutshell, when you are choosing your soft plastic, choose one that's going to come out about halfway down the lure or further, closer to the tail. You don't want the hook too close to the top of the lure because you'll get a lot of strikes that don't hook up. Go for a jig head size that you think is going to match the conditions that you're fishing. If you know you're fishing a small dam and you don't have to cast far, get the lightest one you can. If you know you're going to Lake Eildon and you're fishing from the bank and you want to cast out a mile, get something a bit heavier that keeps the small hook. There is billions of different bloody jig heads and stuff on the shelf these days to choose from. Choose one that suits your needs, and remember, you want that hook to come out about halfway down or a bit further, and you want a jig head that suits the conditions that you're fishing. I know I've rambled on a little bit here, but I just get this question a lot, and I hope that this can help a few people decide exactly which jig head and soft plastic they want to buy. The rivers are looking great, folks. Have a great October. Hopefully we get some rain. Fingers crossed, and I will see you with my next river roundup at the end of October.